Training Ground 17. Hinata wiped the sweat off her brow, sitting down to catch her breath. She looked up at the sky, the sun falling behind the trees. Beside her sat Sakura Haruno, gulping down a bottle of water. "I would say that test went well," the pink-haired shinobi said, passing Hinata a bottle of her own. Hinata nodded, undoing the high ponytail in her hair. It flopped down to an inch above her waist. Sakura did the opposite, tying her hair into a short ponytail that rested on her shoulders. She pushed the bangs behind her ears. "Do you think Lady Tsunade will be happy with our results?" Hinata smiled. "I'm certain. Even she would have had difficulty performing that technique herself." Sakura pulled off her headband. "Well, I better get home. We both have to make a report to Lady Tsunade in the morning." "Say hello to Sasuke for me if he shows up," Hinata asked. Sakura smiled and nodded before walking off tiredly. Today's work had been brutal, and Hinata wanted nothing more than to go home and crawl into her bed. But first, she had duties to attend to at the hospital. She slowly stood, her height reaching 5'8". She loosened her lavender jacket, letting her chest pop out underneath her black shirt. She disappeared from the training ground in a splash of water, appearing at the hospital entrance. Walking down the steps was Shikamaru. "Hey, Hinata," he greeted lazily. "Where's Tamari?" the Hyuga asked. "At her hotel room. I just left from visiting Choji. He ate too much again tonight." "I didn't know that was possible," Hinata giggled, the Nara scratching the back of his head. "I'll see you around." Shikamaru waved farewell. The Hyuga entered the hospital and put on the nurse attire, walking into another late night of work. She got home 4 hours later, throwing her clothes on the couch before jumping in for a quick shower. She didn't bother to put on undergarments, and instead zipped up one of her boyfriend's old jackets. Hinata looked at the small table on the other side of the room, covered with letters, each one stacked neatly in order. She breathed in his fading scent before flopping onto the bed, curling up into a ball, and falling into slumber. Deserts, outside the hidden sand village. Sasori wished his ears had a turn-off switch so he wouldn't need to listen to Datara's constant rambling. The blonde was far too eccentric for his own good. The only use he had was as a decoy as far as he cared. "Hey, Sasori, are you listening to me?" "No." Datara face-palmed. "I said let me take a crack at the one-tailed Jinchuriki first." "Fine, just don't screw this up, idiot," he responded with his gravelly voice. "Ha! My perfect art cannot fail. Just plant a few of my bombs on him, then boom! We win." "Wait, did you just call me an idiot?" Sasori looked ahead blankly. "You did, you rotten excuse for an artist." "Shut up before I turn you into one of my puppets. We are here." The two Akatsuki members gazed at the walls surrounding their target. Datara, suddenly serious, stuffed his hand-mouths into his satchel, pulling out a clump of clay, forming it into a bird. He jumped onto it and flew up into the air, with Sasori watching from the ground. He had his own job to do. His hunched-over body slowly crawled across the sand village, completely unprepared for the battle to ensue. Naruto and Hinata's apartment, morning of next day. Hinata rolled over in her sheets. She instinctively reached for the place Naruto used to sleep, before remembering that he was still training away from the village. She forced herself up, rubbing the sleep from her pale eyes. She slouched on the edge of the bed, opening her eyes to a strange sight. Ocean blue orbs stared into her white gaze, unflinching. 3 whisker marks framed each cheek, in the center a blank expression on his lips. She blinked. He smiled. "Good morning, my princess." "How long have you been here?" "A few minutes." Hinata blinked again, her eyes sparkling with joy. Her arms were around his neck before he could react. He let out a yelp as the two crashed into the floor. Hinata snuggled in as close as she could, making it hard for Naruto to breathe. But he hugged her back with just as much ferocity. They laid there for a solid 5 minutes, enjoying the embrace with everything they had. Hinata rose her head and locked her lips with his. They kissed for what felt like an eternity before Naruto finally pushed themselves up. 2 years. Feels like it was forever, Naruto commented, taking in Hinata's appearance. Hinata blushed at his gaze, her timid side showing. She looked down at the orange jacket she was wearing, remembering that she had nothing underneath. She disappeared in a burst of speed, reappearing in a proper set of clothes. Naruto chuckled. You've grown, in more ways than one as well. Hinata put on a pouting face, covering her chest with her arms. Naruto smiled and stood up, showcasing his new look. He had grown as well, standing at 6 feet. His hair was noticeably longer, sitting loosely on his shoulders. Short bangs framed his face, similar to his father's. A spike of hair hung over his forehead protector. He wore black pants and sandals. His clothes' color palette had swapped. Black sweater with orange stripes on the waist and sleeves, the Uzumaki swirl on his shoulder, and the symbol for number 9 on his back. His old storage bracelets were replaced with new ones. And I assume your strength and skill have grown with you as well. Hinata stood proud. I bet I could give you a run for your money. Naruto chuckled. We'll see about that. Let's just say I didn't slack off during me and Jiraiya's travels. He told me to meet him at the Hokage's office once I was done visiting you. Want to join me and hear a report? Hinata nodded, moving to put her shinobi gear on. As she did, Naruto took a good look at her. Her lavender jacket zipped up to her neck, with the sleeves coming down an inch past her elbows. The rest of her arms were covered with Anbu-style arm guards. Her pants were dark gray, and her sandals were dark blue. Her forehead protector was tied around her neck. The purple ribbon she used to have in her hair was now tied around her wrist. Finally, he noticed that she had gotten small earrings, one black and one white, which he assumed was meant to be yin and yang. Once she was ready, she stood in front of Naruto. He nodded and placed his hand on her shoulder, the two vanishing from their apartment. Less than a second later, they stood at the entrance to the Hokage's office. Hinata swore the flying Raijin felt faster than before. Naruto paused briefly before knocking on the door. Enter. Naruto opened the door. To the side, Jiraiya sat on a couch. His appearance still the same from 2 years ago, except that his eyes seemed to possess a bit more wisdom. Tsunade Senju sat in the Hokage's chair slouched over, her hat hanging on the wall. Her appearance was identical to the last time he saw her. Her hazel brown eyes looked up from her paperwork to the young man standing before him. Naruto Uzumaki. About time you showed up. Tsunade's tone made the blonde flinch. He was expecting a warm welcome. What's up, Granny Tsunade? The woman stood and walked around her desk. She brought Naruto in for a bear hug, crushing his ribs. If Kurama did not dwell inside him, he would have died from her monster strength. Once the pain subsided, Tsunade sat back at her desk, her posture visibly different. It's good to have you both back. It honestly hasn't felt the same without you, she said with a smile. Good to be back, Naruto replied. So, Jiraiya, you told me you had some urgent information on the Akatsuki, Tsunade asked, her attitude shifting. Yes, Jiraiya began. We got confirmation that they are on the move. They should be going after the tailed beasts in order, which means they will be going after Gaara within the next few days. Tsunade frowned. Gaara is already up to his neck trying to run his village. The last thing he or them need is to lose him. So Gaara became Kazekage? That's great! Naruto exclaimed with excitement. Tsunade smiled, knowing how close the two were as friends. The next time Tamari and Shikamaru show up, I will inform her. Gaara is capable of helping himself, but if they attack the village, he will be at a disadvantage. Jiraiya nodded. During our travels, we also met a few more of the Jinchuriki, and know the identity of the rest we haven't. Of course, we have Gaara and Naruto. We met Roshi of the Four Tails, who is already acquainted with Naruto. He's currently rogue and in hiding. Han of the Five Tails still remains in the Hidden Stone. Naruto also met him in the past. The Tsuchikage still has no idea he has met us. If he did, it might cause problems. Tsunade nodded. Onoki, the Tsuchikage, was stubborn. It was a good thing he did not know of his Jinchuriki's activities. Lastly, we know Fu from the Hidden Waterfall, as her village is aligned with ours. Naruto finished. So who's left? Tsunade asked. Yagura, the Mizukage, holds 3 tails. But due to his recent activities regarding the Bloody Mist, it is very possible he has no control of his tailed beast. Or he's just that kind of person. Either that, or he is being influenced by some outside force. Possibly Akatsuki. The 6 tails Jinchuriki is currently unknown, but we know they hail from the Hidden Mist. We were hoping that Zabuza knew him. Tsunade pondered. Zabuza Momochi was a former Mist shinobi who Naruto had persuaded to join the Leaf. He was currently acting as an Anbu squad leader, as was his apprentice, Haku. They were both away on missions, so they would have to wait for now. The last 2 are in the Hidden Cloud Village. Yugito Ni has 2 tails, and Killer B, the Raikage's brother, has 8 tails. Cloud has impeccable security, so we haven't been able to reach either of them. Still, we are trying. Tsunade nodded. Good work. I will have a message sent to the Cloud, and I suppose the Mist as well, explaining the situation. We can only hope they will respond. Moving on. Naruto! The blonde stood to attention. Obviously, you have been training with Jiraiya for the past 2 years. I want a complete detail of your capabilities. You are currently ranked as a special Jonin. I assume you are due for a promotion to full Jonin. But in order to do that, I need a recommendation paper and a display of your skills. I can draw up that recommendation, Jiraiya said with his hand raised. It's the least I can do for my godson. Naruto smiled at his teacher. As for that test, I don't mind fighting someone, Naruto said, cracking his knuckles. Who do you want me to beat to a pulp? Actually, I had a few people in mind. Normally you would fight other Jonin, but in this case, I want you to fight your peers. My peers? Yes. All of them have been promoted to Chunin, and a few are ready for Jonin rank. This way I can see both your skills and theirs. Team 10 is currently on separate assignments. Shikamaru was acting as bodyguard for Tamari during her stay as the Sans eyes and ears here. Choji and Ino are on a mission with Azuma. Team Guy are all present, with Neji having the potential for Jonin. Your old teammate Shino is currently training to become his clan's new head. He also has a Jonin rank looming above him. Team 7 is currently disbanded. Kiba is attending to clan affairs. Sakura is still under my tutelage. And lastly, Sasuke. Naruto tensed. Sasuke is currently on a training trip of his own in the Forest of Death. He disappears inside for several weeks before coming out to rest. The only ones who really see him are me and Sakura. As for his strengths, I have no concrete knowledge. Naruto nodded. The Uchiha was definitely taking his training seriously. He was glad that he had decided to stay. He forced the thoughts of him away and turned to his girlfriend. What about you, Hinata? Are you still a Chunin? Hinata shook her head. I became Jonin a few months ago after completing Tsunade's training. Naruto beamed and pulled her in for a hug. So, you want me to fight the others once everyone is back? Excluding Hinata, yes. But I do want you and Sasuke to have a separate battle in the future. Naruto nodded in understanding. Is that everything? Tsunade shook her head. Nothing of importance. If that is everything, I suggest you get reacquainted with your village. But after a few days, you better believe I am putting you back to work on missions. You're not just gonna laze around until the Akatsuki are dealt with. Of course, ma'am, Naruto chuckled. He reached forward and shook his Hokage's hand before taking Hinata's hand and vanishing in a yellow flash. It's exactly like Minato. I see he has improved well. Jiraiya let out a boisterous laugh. More than any of you will expect. About a week ago, the two of us had a spar. It quickly escalated to what I can only call a fight to the death. If I didn't plant a suppression seal on him, who knows what could have happened. He almost killed you? A Sannin? Tsunade asked in shock. No, nothing like that. He wasn't out for blood. He could have broken that suppression seal with ease. It was the way we decided to win the match. He had multiple opportunities to do so to me. He just wanted a challenge. Jiraiya responded with a smile. Tsunade groaned. Great. I just told him to fight his old friends, and you're telling me he could solo you and come out on top multiple times. You could have said something before. Must have slipped my mind, Jiraiya replied sheepishly. Anyway, you were saying something about the council before Naruto came in. Tsunade clenched her fist. They have been up in my face ever since Naruto left. I thought most of them had come over to his side. Most of them have. Hiashi and Inuichi are the ones who give me the most hassle, as they don't trust Naruto. Choza is still on the edge, but is leaning to his side. Him and the others are just worried, while Hiashi and Inuichi are just worried about him as a Jinchuriki. Every day I must hear the same question from them. Is Naruto safe? Is Jiraiya keeping him in check? How am I supposed to know? The only one he communicated with over the last 2 years was with Hinata and their constant letters back and forth. Jiraiya nodded. Every spare moment he gave Naruto he spent resting or writing to his girlfriend. Not to mention the fact that the Hyuga clan is getting restless. I assume you know Neji challenged Hiashi to a one-on-one for the position of clan head. Yes, I did, Jiraiya said. Has the fight happened yet? No, Tsunade sipped her tea. Hinata said he was planning to in a few weeks. Hopefully after that, their clan will settle down. Fortunately, none of the other clans are having any major issues. Inuichi is the only one who was troubled, since his daughter Ino was a friend of Naruto's. Though I'm sure it is nothing of significant importance. Jiraiya leaned back. So, how has Sensei been doing? Enjoying his vacation? More than you can imagine, Tsunade chuckled. Once I was comfortable with my position, he vowed to never set foot in this office again so long as there was paperwork on the desk. Jiraiya laughed. Tsunade smiled. The two were silent for a moment before Tsunade reached into a drawer in her desk. She pulled out a bottle of sake and 2 cups. She handed one to her old friend and teammate. Drink one with me, like the good old days. Jiraiya accepted the glass, letting her fill their cups. Remember that time I convinced both you and Orochimaru to have a drink for the first time? Of course. I was dead after the first shot. You held on for a few more bottles. And Orochimaru was stone cold the entire time. That poison immunity of his made it so he had to pay for all the bottles we drank. Jiraiya sighed and downed his glass. Yes. Just like the good old days. Streets of the Hidden Leaf Village. Hinata was busy showing Naruto around the village, showing him the new establishments that had popped up. As they walked, the people looked at him with awe. Naruto had completely changed since the last time they saw him in the Chunin exams. Since then, their hatred for him had almost vanished completely. They now looked at him with respect, sorry for the pain they had caused him so many years ago. But just from the look he gave them as he walked past, they realized there was no need for an apology. They had been forgiven long ago. The few shinobi they did come across were not as kind. Many of them still harbored ill will to the blonde, still blinded by the rage they felt for the nine-tailed fox. But Naruto ignored their glares. not possessing a care in the world for what they felt. "So, how has it been living all by yourself for the past few years?" Naruto asked. "Boring, lonely. With you gone, the apartment just feels empty. I even ended up staying at someone's house for the night a few times just to ease my loneliness at night. It's mainly been Sakura, and since we trained together under Tsunade, we have grown rather close. I heard she was living with Sasuke now in the old Uchiha district. When did that happen?" "A few months ago. But since Sasuke disappears so often, they don't really live together that much. As far as I'm aware, they haven't even kissed yet or anything." Naruto grinned. "Well, we lived together for almost 5 years, and we only kissed for the first time shortly before I left. And considering how bad Sasuke is with romance, I can't say I'm surprised. Now that we're on the subject about living together," Hinata began. "After you left, I started thinking about us buying a new house. The apartment is cozy, but I don't think it will be able to hold the two of us for much longer." "I was thinking something similar," the blonde confessed. "My parents' home is still under lockdown, but I can access it and I'm sure Tsunade won't object. Though we should wait to do that until I decide to reveal that I'm the fourth son. It's big enough for both of us, and a family if needed." Hinata's cheeks turned red at the word family. Naruto noticed and averted his gaze. The two had never really thought about starting a family, but just the word made them a little uneasy. "We don't need to worry about that," Naruto said, breaking Hinata from her thoughts. "We are still only 15. We have a few more years before we have to start thinking about that." "You're right," Hinata said, pushing the thought away. The two continued their walk, a pair of familiar faces coming their way. A man and a woman, each with dark hair. "Kurenai-sensei! Asuma, it's been a while!" Naruto called out, waving. The Jonin noticed the blonde and waved back. "You know you don't have to call me sensei. We are the same rank," Kurenai said with a smile, looking at her old students, who she had barely trained at all herself. "You are looking well, Naruto," Asuma said, shaking his hand. "I trust your trip was worthwhile." "Indeed it was." Naruto adopted a devilish grin. "And I see you two are still as close as ever. Have you tied the knot yet?" The two adults blushed a bright red. Naruto snickered. "You're one to talk, kid. You and Hinata haven't made any advancements in your relationship." Hinata scoffed. "Are you kidding? I have my sweet Naruto right where I want him. When he least suspects it, I'll make the first move." Naruto blinked, fearful for his life at what his girlfriend meant. She turned to him with a loving smile, making him tense even more. He tried to push the fear away and cleared his throat. "Look, Asuma, we are still technically kids. You can't expect us to do anything crazy yet. You two, on the other hand, well, it's practically written all over your face that you have done the deed before. I don't need to sense if you're lying or not to tell that." Asuma's cheeks brightened even more, Kurenai's hands curling into fists. She lashed out at Naruto, who grabbed hold of Hinata, waved goodbye, and flashed away. The black-haired woman growled, Asuma sweating profusely at her anger. Hokage Monument. Naruto and Hinata walked onto the head of Minato Namikaze. Naruto sat down, deciding to place a Horizon Seal down in case he ever needed to teleport there. Hinata took a seat beside him. "It's been a long time since we came up here together," Hinata sighed, leaning on his shoulder. "If I remember correctly, it was after you lost against Neji in a clan spar, the day before you were kidnapped." Hinata nodded, the memory resurfacing. A painful night, but also the night that had changed her life for what she believed was the better. "So, you haven't told me anything about your last 2 years. Besides training, has anything been happening in the village?" Hinata folded her arms as Naruto pulled her closer. "Well, as you know, many of our old friends are training to become their clan heads. Other than that, not much has happened. They held a joint tuning exams here and in the hidden sand. Nothing really eventful went down. Oh, actually, Someone might have tried to take Fu's tailed beast. They failed miserably, of course, since I was there supervising alongside Gaara. Everyone else was promoted. How's Fu been? Having Chome almost extracted, Naruto asked with worry. Hinata smiled. As energetic as ever, she felt unwell for a day or two, but then she was back to normal. The blonde sighed in relief. He looked up to the sun, slowly beginning to fade beyond the horizon. The orange glow it cast was one of his favorite sights. He missed the scenery of his home. Hinata buried her head into Naruto's chest. He pulled her in, taking in her sweet scent. Do you have any plans for tonight, darling? I had planned to do some late-night training before you showed up, the Hyuga replied. What about you? I'm up for some training. We can see how far each of us have grown. Alright then, we'll go. After a little fun. Hinata leaned up and pulled the blonde down for a kiss. The two engaged in a makeout session until the sun faded from view. Once they were finished, the two flashed away to the training grounds. Unknown location. Midnight. Gaara's eyes fluttered open. He felt himself flying through the air, an uncommon position to awaken to. The memories rushed back as he made sure not to reveal that he was conscious. He sensed his assailant named Datara, as well as a second presence that felt distorted. He opened his eyes enough to see them land on the ground. As he was carried into what felt like a cave, he silently slipped a hand into his pouch, pulling out a three-pronged kunai with a yellow handle. He let it fall and embed itself into the dirt. He only hoped Naruto wouldn't get captured by their Akatsuki enemies while rescuing him. If you like what you just heard, consider hitting the subscribe button and bell icon to get notified about new videos. If there's a part you've missed, then check out the entire playlist on screen. If you like this story, please share it with your fellow anime lovers. Any support helps a lot. That's all for now. This is Ninja Kai, disappearing in a golden flash.